In the hushed parlours and shadowed nurseries of the late 1800s, a quiet and peculiar custom took root in the fertile ground of grief. Families in Britain, and indeed across the Western world, found themselves living in an era where the presence of death was an intimate, almost daily companion. When a child was lost to sickness or accident, the silence they left behind was often too vast to bear. To fill this void, some families commissioned a small, still thing. They sought out a doll, crafted not for play, but for memory. This was a doll made to look like the child who was gone, a porcelain effigy dressed in the very clothes the child had worn, sometimes even crowned with a lock of the child's own hair. Today, these dolls provoke a deep, instinctual shiver. They occupy a strange, liminal space between treasured toy and sombre relic. They look like playthings, with their painted cheeks and glass eyes, yet they are imbued with the weight of a life cut short. They feel less like dolls and more like small, frozen people, caught forever in a state of perfect, unchanging childhood. This duality is what makes them so unsettling. They are objects of immense love, born from a sorrow so profound that it sought to give itself a physical form. The stillness of the doll becomes a mirror for the stillness that has fallen over the family, a tangible representation of an unbearable absence. They are not merely objects. They are containers for memory, vessels for a grief that had nowhere else to go. The creation of these memorial dolls was a delicate and painstaking process, undertaken by skilled artisans who understood the gravity of their task. The doll was not just a likeness, it was a vessel for a family's deepest emotions. The heads were most often sculpted from fine bisque porcelain, materials chosen for their ability to mimic the smooth, pale translucence of a child's skin. This gave the dolls an ethereal, almost lifelike quality that was both beautiful and haunting. The eyes were a critical feature, sometimes meticulously hand-painted to capture a specific shade, or more commonly made of glass, inserted to create a gaze that seemed to follow you with a silent, knowing depth. The result was a face that seemed to hover between sleep and wakefulness, life and its absence. The materials used for the rest of the doll were just as significant, often incorporating deeply personal elements. The hair was frequently made from human hair, and in many cases, families would provide a lock of their own deceased child's hair to be woven into the doll's wig. This act transformed the object from a mere representation into a true relic, containing a physical part of the person it was meant to memorialize. The clothes were almost always the child's own garments, often their christening gown, Sunday best, further blurring the line between the effigy and the individual. The doll maker's goal was to create not just a generic representation of a child, but a specific portrait. They would often work from photographs, sketches, or even a death mask of the child to capture their unique features as accurately as possible. The curve of a lip, the shape of the nose, the arch of an eyebrow, every detail was considered in the slow, deliberate work of sculpting and painting. The final creation could be astonishingly realistic, a soft and gentle likeness that seemed almost to breathe, were it not for its profound and unnerving stillness. This verisimilitude was the doll's power. It made the memory tangible, but it also created the eerie sense that a small soul was trapped within the porcelain shell, waiting quietly in the silence of the house. This careful craftsmanship resulted in an object that was far more than a toy. Each doll was a unique piece of folk art, an artifact of mourning created with a mixture of technical skill and deep empathy. The fine, slow work was a ritual in itself, a process of giving form to an invisible grief. The craftsmen who made them were not just doll makers, they were partners in the family's act of remembrance. The doll they delivered was a finished piece of a larger, more sombre puzzle. An object designed to be looked at, to be held. The ways in which grieving families interacted with these porcelain children could seem deeply strange to a modern observer. Yet they were part of a private language of sorrow. Once the doll was brought into the home, it was not hidden away, but integrated into the fabric of daily life. Some families would place the doll at the dining table in the child's empty seat, a silent participant in family meals. Others would tuck the doll into the child's bed each night, smoothing its clothes and whispering a good night that would go unanswered. The doll became a focal point for rituals of care, allowing the family to continue the physical acts of parenting even after the child was gone. This was a way of channeling love that had no other outlet. The doll's role was not always confined to the private sphere of the home. In some instances, the effigy played a part in the public rituals of mourning. A doll might be dressed for a funeral and placed within a small open coffin, allowing mourners to view a serene, idealized image of the child rather than the stark reality of death. Victorian portraiture and funereal customs reveal a society with a different relationship to death. It was common for the deceased, including children, to be laid out in the living room for several days before burial. This practice of keeping the body at home created a space where the transition to a memorial doll felt more natural. The post-mortem photograph, often showing the child posed as if sleeping peacefully, was a related practice. The photograph captured the face for memory, but the doll provided a form for ongoing grief. It gave the family a physical proxy, something to touch and hold when the ache of absence became too much to bear. It was a quiet, personal way to grieve that allowed for a continued, tangible connection. This practice of interacting with the doll was a way to process a loss that society otherwise offered few outlets for, especially for mothers. It provided a private space for sorrow, a silent confidant that could bear the weight of unspoken words. The doll could be held, spoken to, and cried over without judgment. It was an anchor in the storm of grief, a constant object in a world that had been irrevocably changed. For some, this ritual was a necessary step in the long, slow process of healing. For others, the doll became a permanent fixture, a memorial that would sit in the house for decades, long after the sharpest edges of grief had softened into a quiet, persistent ache. When we look at these porcelain children now, separated from their original context of grief, we experience a complex and often contradictory swirl of emotions. There is an immediate sense of sadness for the lost child. There is an immediate sense of sadness for the grieving family. We see the doll as a symbol of a profound tragedy. But beneath that sadness, there is often a strange and persistent chill, an eerie feeling that is difficult to shake. The dolls are tender. The dolls are uncanny. Their fixed glass eyes, designed to mimic life, they can seem to look right through you. The gaze can feel empty yet penetrating. Their small painted mouths, often set in a faint, serene smile, can feel unsettlingly ambiguous, caught between peace and a silent scream. This unease comes from the doll's status as an object that closely imitates a human being. Yet the doll is fundamentally not alive. We instinctively know the doll is porcelain. We instinctively know the doll is cloth. We instinctively know the doll is hair. We know the child it represents is long gone. And yet the object still commands a powerful presence, holding the shape and form of a life that was once lived. It occupies the uncanny valley, almost, but not quite, human. The more lifelike the doll, the more pronounced the feeling. Today, these memorial dolls and the photographs associated with them have found a new life: museums, private collections, the digital world. They are studied by historians as artifacts of social history, offering a window into the mourning practices of a bygone era. Collectors seek them out: rarity, craftsmanship, powerful aura. The dolls are no longer active participants in a family's grief. They have become historical objects, their stories now told by curators, academics. But even in this new context, they have not lost their power to unsettle and to fascinate. They continue to ask us difficult questions about how we remember our dead, how we cope with loss. Modern artists, filmmakers have been particularly drawn to the potent visual power of these dolls. Horror films, gothic tales, shorthand for the uncanny, symbol of innocence corrupted, vessel for a restless spirit. Ultimately, the porcelain children left behind are objects of profound duality. They are a gift, they are a wound, they are a comfort, they are a source of deep unease. For the families who commissioned them, they were a desperate, loving attempt to keep a child near, to give a face to a memory too precious to lose. It was a way to bind a devastating loss to a tangible thing, to create a physical anchor in a sea of sorrow. The doll was a private place for grief, a silent keeper of a family's deepest secrets, saddest stories. It was a testament to a love so strong it sought to defy the finality of death itself, even if only in effigy. When we see their cold glass eyes and pale porcelain skin today, we feel the unnerving proximity of that love and sorrow. The dolls are a stark, physical reminder of how intertwined these two powerful emotions can be. The dolls are a final, lingering look at a grief so deep it had to be given a body, a face, and a place to sit in the long, silent hours of a house where a child used to be.